Hello, welcome, everybody. There is, as usual, the Q&A option, but I've also just opened up the chat thing. So you can technically type things in two different places, neither of which I think can be seen by anybody else. So just so you know, the chat function, in case that feels easier for any reason, should work, and it should go directly to me. Right, what you guys did in your last lesson was stuff to do with the lungs and a very important topic to have some understanding of, um, called respiration. I will first check if you guys have um, questions on the homework. Please feel free to ask if you have attempted the homework that you received. I have booklet one, two, three open, um, and I will go through and I've received a question. So year eight, which is booklet two, it should be. Just say the booklet number in case you from the front, but it should be broadly year seven, eight, nine. It just depends. Sometimes a tiny bit different. Um, so first question, A, part one. Here. Okay. As is often the case, you do have to deal with questions on a graph quite frequently. And this is one of those questions. So an athlete did a 6-month training program. This shows the effect of the same amount of exercise on his heart rate before and after the training program. Now, what would you expect to happen if you did a training program? You'd expect to be fitter and healthier, and you would expect that your heart rate wouldn't increase as much anymore when you exercise. So when you do like a training program, you basically make your heart stronger, which means it doesn't need to pump as much or as hard. Um, and that basically is a sign of being fitter. So what they're showing here on this graph, and again, you should take your time to understand a graph when you do these things, is that before the training program, this was his heart rate sort of before and after doing any exercise, right? So it went all the way up to there when he was exercising, and then it fell back down to normal. Whereas after the training program, he started at a lower place. You can see that there. It went up when he exercised, but not as high as it did before he had done the training program, which shows that he's probably fitter and healthier. And then it dropped to a lower point. The question is, what was the maximum heart rate of the athlete during exercise before the training program? So before the training program is the red line that I have um, created. And so the maximum means the highest point it reached, which is there. And so what you do is you go from here and you read across to this number here, and that is the answer. 150, not 50, 150. So that 150 should be the answer to that question. I'll again comes three part one for the year seven one. I'll do that. It should be here. I'll do the year nine question in a second. Three part 3I, it says here. I don't know what that means. I'll do all of three quickly. The diagram below shows an organ system in the human body. What is the name of the organ system? So if you're looking at lungs and your windpipe and stuff, then that should be your respiratory system. That should be. The names of parts A and B. The name of part A, you can put windpipe, but the technical name for it is called the trachea. And then part B has part B pointing. That's just your lung, isn't it? So there's two of them. That's just your lung. Um, that's that. Um, I'll come back to that question. That comment about question one is different on mine. It says something below 150. Um, I'll see what you mean by that in a second. Um, okay, parts C are bones. Well, they give the name of these bones. They should be the ribs. Anything protecting you is ribs related. Um, um, And just whoever the person who's asking those last questions, I think what you need to do is just make sure that you, when you join these things, put in your name somewhere because I want to know who it is. The photograph shows a man using a sanding machine on a piece of wood. He's wearing a mask to stop him breathing in the sawdust. It has tiny holes in it. When the man breathes in, the mask separates particles of sawdust from the air. What is this method of separation called? Slightly tricky question because it relates to something a little bit different. Let me just check where I am. So this is 3D. Okay, so the answer to this question is called filtration. It's really a chemistry thing, but filtration is when you if I had a filter funnel and some filter paper here, okay, then if I put something into here like a liquid, then smaller things would get through here, but anything bigger would stay here. It's a bit like when you drain pasta, the bigger things stay there. And so that's what's happening here. The particles of sawdust that are bigger are not getting through the mask, but the air still is. So that's why it's called filtration. If the man breathed in particles of sawdust, what might happen to him? You can mention coughing or sneezing or get a sore throat or choking, or you can even go as far as his lungs might be damaged. He might get asthma, he might have difficulty breathing. There's quite a lot of answer to that question. Um, right, let me see what else have we got. Bump, bump. Booklet 1, part 3, 8. Did I not do that one? Um, one, oh no, part 2. This one. So going back to that graph, give two differences between the heart rate of the athlete before and after the training program. So after the training program, what is the difference between basically the green line, which is after, and the red line, which is before? So you could say that your maximum heart rate is lower after the training program. You see, that doesn't get as high up. Whereas before the training program, it got up to 150. Now it gets to like 130 something. So the maximum heart rate is lower. That's what you could say. You could also look at where we started. Look at before you did any exercise, look at your heart rate. It's lower after your training program than it was before it. So you can mention the starting heart rate, or the proper word is the resting heart rate, is lower. And that is what happens if you do exercise and you're fitter, your heart rate, just how fast, how much it beats, will be lower if you're fitter, essentially. Um, right, let me just keep going through this. Question 1 is different on mine. It says something below 150. I don't know what you mean by it says something below 150, if you want to clarify that. Yeah, so that is that. 1A part 2, year 8. I think I've done that. Yep, just done that, those two differences. Um, booklet 1 part 2, done that. Question 7 on the year 9 paper, 7 year 9. Right, okay, a few people have asked this. So let's have a look what complications we are going to see now. Right, okay. Right. So again, these are the kind of questions that are um, um, it's hard to prepare for these questions, I suppose. You have to sort of just read the question on the day, by the day being when you're doing your homework, and try to understand the information that's been given to you. Okay. So in an investigation, 4 groups of athletes were studied. The maximum rate of oxygen consumption, that means how fast you're taking in oxygen, was measured, and the mean for each group was calculated. The athletes then ran 10-mile races, and the mean of the best time was calculated for each group. The results are in the table. So, Group A, it tells you that this is on average how much oxygen they take in every minute per minute. Okay. And this is how many minutes it took for them to run a race, a 10-mile race. The Group B had a slightly lower oxygen consumption. They take in less oxygen every minute, and their time was a bit longer. And then Group C was you can see the information now. So it's understanding the information first. And then what you have to notice is when you have a bigger oxygen consumption, what happens to your time taken to run the race? It is the lowest, right? It's the quickest time when you had the most oxygen being taken in. The group that had the least amount of oxygen taken in, 57.4, took the longest. It took over an hour to run that 10-mile race. So that is the relationship. The relationship is that the higher the rate of oxygen consumption, so let's write this down. So the higher this number is, the faster you seem to run the race, okay? So the faster or the shorter the time taken to run the race, or the lower the time taken. And the reason for that is because the more oxygen you take in, the more respiration you can do. This is the thing that you learnt. Um, and the more respiration you can do, the more energy you can release. And if you're releasing more energy, you're going to run a race faster, aren't you? So the more oxygen you can take in, the faster you'll be able to run a race. Um, yeah, right. Question seven. I will come to 7B in a moment. I'll just finish this part two now. An explanation. I think I just did that. Right. So the extra, I'll do that again. So the what we're saying here is that the faster you're able to take in oxygen, the quicker you'll run the race. So we have to explain that, right? So the way I would explain that is that the faster oxygen is taken into the body, the more respiration, or the faster respiration can take place. If there's faster respiration, this would release more energy. So the athlete can run faster. That's how you explain it. So you say, well, yes, I can see that if you take in more oxygen, you get a faster time in the race. But why? It's because the more oxygen you take in, the more energy you can release from respiration, and therefore the faster you can run. Right, I'll be doing every question. Seven part two done, isn't it? That's all seven done. Good. Right. Let me see what else is in that. Year eight, question 7B. Let's have a look. Aha, love it. Right. Let's just does anybody ask okay, quick. I'll make sure I do every question, don't worry. Right. Year eight, question 7B, this one here. So in a lung, let's say that's a lung, okay, the two lungs, it's telling you that the average number of alveoli, there's those little air sacs, alveoli, the average number in your lung is 280 million. Right. And then it says that the average surface area of 1 million of them is 0.25 meters squared. So that's how much space they cover, 1 million of them. Calculate the total surface area of a human lung. Okay, so 1 million of these things have this surface area, but you have got 280 million of those things. So surely your surface area is 280 times bigger than this number. So that's what you do. You do 280 times 0.25 because 280 million is 280 times bigger than 1 million. Um, and so you just multiply those numbers together and you might be able to do it in your head, but the answer is 70. But you can use a calculator should you wish to. I'm on the year 8 homework, so let's have a look at that. Homework London respiration booklet question 9D. Let's have a look at that. Ah, tricky question, this one. This is the harder question on here, by the way. So let me just talk through the whole thing. It's quite interesting for anybody here. Glucose is broken down in respiration. It's chemical formula for glucose you should have had in your notes because you'd have had a symbol equation for it, but it is that one. Then the diagram shows apparatus of a student used to investigate aerobic respiration. Right, what have we got here? We have got some wood lice. We've got some lime water. And again, this requires a little bit of extra knowledge that you might not have, but it's okay. The lime water goes cloudy when carbon dioxide is added to it. Actually, you don't need the extra information because that is the extra information. So it tells you a little bit about this stuff called lime water. It's a clear liquid like water, but when you have carbon dioxide put through it, it goes like whitish and cloudy. After 10 minutes, the lime water in flask B was cloudy, but the lime water in flask A remained colorless. Why? Um, I think it's because the wood lice are respiring. In other words, they're breathing. So they're releasing carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is going into glass B, where the lime water is. And so it turns cloudy. Let me just see if that is what the answer wants here. Um, I know that's not the question you've asked. I'm getting. Um, yeah, so flask B goes more cloudy because the carbon dioxide produced by the wood lice goes into flask B. So the CO2 produced by the wood lice goes into flask B. And then the other thing that you can say is, and this is a hard question to get, but why doesn't A go cloudy? It's because of the air that's coming in. The air that comes in here contains very little carbon dioxide, basically. And so that's why it doesn't change color. Okay, Flask A acts as a control. What is the purpose of a control? I'm just telling you the answer to this question. It takes a bit of time to get used to this, but a control is something that we do for a comparison. Okay, it's basically to compare one thing with another. So a control is like you do an experiment, but you have one that you don't touch, and it's so that you can compare to see what happens. Right, then the student repeated the investigation with no wood lice. What would happen with no wood lice? Um, well, surely with no wood lice, nothing would happen. The lime water would stay colorless because the reason the color changed was because these wood lice are like breathing, they're giving out carbon dioxide. So that won't happen at all. So you just need to say um, the appearance of lime water in A and B would remain colorless. Nothing would happen. Okay, so that's that one. And then nine. Yeah, that's it, right? And that should be easy enough, so I can leave that one. Right, let me go back to other questions. If I do miss anybody, just repeat what you said. Question eight, yes. Question six, yes. Seven. Okay. Ooh, not that one. This one. Um, right. Paula is training for a marathon. When she runs, her heart beats faster than it does when she is resting. Um, Complete the sentences. Right. When she is running, Paula's muscle activity increases. So when you're running, your muscles are working harder, aren't they? To do this, your muscle cells do something at a faster rate to give you more energy. Anytime you read the word energy in biology, think respiration, because that's where we get our energy from. So what the muscles are doing more of is respiring. They respire at a faster rate to give more energy. Her muscles need to be supplied with two things more quickly. Now, normally, well, the two things that we need for respiration in the equation are glucose and oxygen. So they're the words that go here. Her heart beats faster to increase the flow of, well, what flows in your body? Blood, which carries the products. Now, this is a bit harder because the products of respiration are actually carbon dioxide and water. So that is one of them. But there's no water in this box, so you can't say water. So you have to think of what else could it be? Well, the answer is heat, because the other thing that happens is the energy keeps you warm. So that is part of what goes on there. Um, right. What is limestone made of? Um, well, officially the answer is calcium carbonate, but I don't know if that's relevant to what you're asking. Right, done that one. Question four, yeah, seven, which was all of this. Right. Jasmine was trying to find out how much air she breathed out in one breath. She poured water into a bell jar, placed it upside down in a trough of water. Okay. Um, how much air did Jasmine breathe out? Well, look, we started on 200 here, and this was the air. Okay. And then we breathed out, and then the air basically took up all of this space. So we went down to 700. So we started on 200, we finished on 700. So that means we must have added 500 into that's the difference between those two numbers. Um, which should be the answer to that question. It is 500. Right. Air contains all of these gases. Give three differences between the composition of the air Jasmine breathed in and the air she breathed out. So, compared to the air she breathed in, the air she breathed out contained, well, what you breathe out is always more carbon dioxide. We breathe out more carbon dioxide than we breathe in. Um, and we also, when we breathe in a lot of oxygen. When we breathe out, we still breathe out a little bit of the oxygen because it kind of mixes with it, but a lot less. So we breathe out less oxygen. That would always be an answer. So when we're breathing out, we're breathing out more carbon dioxide and less oxygen. And also when we're breathing out, we breathe out more water vapor. That's a little bit harder to get. But when you breathe out, you do breathe out a little bit of water, which is why if you breathe onto a window, then you can write on it because you're making it slightly wet. Yeah, that's what's happening. Um, I seem to have loads of questions coming in here, so I will just keep going. Again, whoever's answering questions, please, as well as your name, which is helpful, just say the booklet number. So booklet from the front. Um, done that. Question 4, year 7. Question 9B, year 9. Did I do that? No. Right. 9B. How do arteries supplying the leg muscles alter the rate of blood flow through them during exercise? That's quite a hard question. It's quite hard. I'll tell you the answer. You wouldn't have known this, but you want to say that the arteries widen. Essentially, they allow more blood to flow through them by getting wider. You see what I mean? Getting wider. Um, 9B and 9F year 8. Adam, hello. Um, did I do that already? No, I didn't. Shouldn't have needed to ask that. 9F year 8. This one. Um, guarantee the answers in your notes because I wrote them. But the anaerobic respiration in yeast. Anaerobic respiration involves glucose turning into carbon dioxide and ethanol. Okay, that's anaerobic respiration in plants and yeast, which is different to anaerobic respiration in animals, which produces lactic acid. Um, yeah, 7, 8B. So we'll look. This one. Um, So, just to be clear, the words anaerobic respiration means the word anaerobic means without oxygen. That's what it means. There's two types of respiration. You can do one with oxygen, which is much better, and one without oxygen, which is not as good. And so it can occur when you do loads of exercise because there is not enough oxygen in the body, right? And then the product of anaerobic respiration, when we talk about animals, we produce this stuff called lactic acid, which is what gives you a stitch, partly. Um, so that covers that. 9B and 9, I think I did. And then booklet 2, we should go back to see what I've done out of this one. So you've got 5 part 3. Oh, okay. 5 part 3. The structures in the cytoplasm where aerobic respiration takes place. Where, from your knowledge of the last biology lesson that you did, where does respiration take place in a cell? The answer is the mitochondria. Okay, that's what that is. Question 6 is quite hard, so I'll just explain this. So next time you do um, biology, you will cover this kind of topic. It just skews into some booklet sometimes. Um, So let me just tell you one thing about an artery that you will learn next time that you should never forget if you listen carefully to what I'm about to say. The word artery begins with an A. What you can remember from that letter A is that it carries blood away, A for away, from the heart. So any artery is always carrying blood away from the heart. In this picture, there is a heart, and there are some arrows going away from it and towards it, as you can see. So if an artery is carrying blood away from the heart, all I need to do is pick one of the letters where the arrow is pointing away. So either A or C would be correct, either of those two. And then this, you also won't forget this if you remember, if you listen, is that a vein has the letters IN in it. And what that can help you remember is that veins carry blood in to the heart. Again, the heart being the crucial thing. So of these four letters, which arrows are going in or towards the heart? We've got B and D. Either of those is the correct answer to that question. Um, and then I'm not going to answer that question because that's just reading the graph. That was also reading the graph. The parts of the blood that carry the most oxygen are called the red blood cells that you will do next time. 7C. An athlete trains to run a marathon. The surface area of each of the athlete's lungs is increased. Give one way in which the increase will help the athlete. So if you've got a bigger surface area of your lungs, that means it basically means that you can, every time you breathe in, more oxygen will go into your blood. Every single time you breathe in. It's because you're fitter, you're an athlete. And so how will that help you if you can get more oxygen around your body? It will give you more energy because oxygen is used for respiration to release energy. Okay, so how will that increase help the athlete? You can mention more oxygen, more energy. Any of these sort of words will be fine. And I think that covers all of those questions that somebody asked me. 8B, 7, I think I've done that. Yes. A. 6A, just did it. That's all fine. 4AB, yeah, 9. 4AB, yeah, 9. Okay, so that's the last one. Unless there's anything else, then please tell me. Um, okay. We have a table showing the percentage of some gases in the air a boy breathed in and out. So look, let's just see what's happening here. This is showing you that when you breathe in, we breathe in very little carbon dioxide. Not zero, but very little. We breathe in quite a lot of oxygen, spelt wrong. And we breathe in a little bit of water vapor because it's just in the air. But when we breathe out um, the air that we breathe out now contains a lot more carbon dioxide than what we breathed in. It contains less oxygen than what we breathed in, and it contains more water than what we breathed in. So what happens in the lungs to change the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in this way? So in the lungs, when you breathe in oxygen, what happens to that oxygen? It moves or diffuses, if you want to use the correct word, into the blood, which means that when we breathe it out, there's not as much there anymore because the oxygen passes from the lungs into the blood. That's what you want to say here. So when you breathe it in, all of this oxygen, it moves from the lungs into the blood. So now when you breathe out, you're not breathing out as much because it's gone, basically. It's gone into your body. Um, pass it from the lungs to the blood. And what happens at the same time? So carbon dioxide that's being produced in your body right now moves from your blood into your lungs, which means that when you breathe out a lot more than what you breathe in. So the other way around, the carbon dioxide passes from the blood to the lungs. Next time we do biology, um, more of this will be covered. It's just some of it overlaps a little bit. Um, and then B, compare the percentage of water vapor in the air breathed out with the percentage in the air breathed in. You just need to say that, well, just compare these two numbers. The best answer to this question, when you're comparing numbers, rather than saying it's five more, think of it in terms of multiples. How many times bigger is the number six than the number one? It is six times bigger. So that's a better answer to say there. The percentage of water vapor is six times bigger when you breathe it out than when you breathe it in. Are there any other questions that I've not answered? I think I've answered everything that anybody asked me. Um, Let me just check if I answered number 4 on this. Yes, I did all of that. Just on this one, lastly. Tube A is called a trachea. Part B, these little things at the end are called the alveoli. That's what you want to be able to say. 9C in the year 9 book, have I not answered that? Interesting. No, I haven't. Explain how an increase in heart rate helped the student during exercise. Okay, I'm going to simplify this easy. When you exercise, your heart beats faster. You know this because you have lived. When you're running around, your heart races faster. Why does that help you? So if your heart, what does it do, firstly, just as an obvious point? If your heart is beating faster, what's actually happening in your body? Doesn't it mean that um, oh, doesn't it mean that your blood is flowing faster? Okay, so blood is flowing faster around your body. Why is that helpful? What's the blood carrying? It's carrying a lot of oxygen. So that means you're supplying oxygen more quickly to your muscles that are running around, that are, using. Why is that good? If you're getting more oxygen, what can they do more of? Respiration, the topic that you have covered. So the muscles can do more respiration. And if they can do more respiration, what do they get out of doing more respiration? More energy is released. And you can see how you can now start getting quite a lot of marks for these things, or they can become quite big mark questions. There are other things you can say, but that should be enough for the marks on those questions. Um, there is another part for year seven on a different page. I'll have a look if I can find that. Oh, this one down here. Yeah, okay. Is that what you meant? I hope that's what you meant. Um, in the wall of tube A, there are rings of stiff material called cartilage. That's one function of the rings of cartilage. Again, quite a difficult question, but essentially the your windpipe has got these stiff rings around it. Um, and the benefit of those being there is that, well, I think one of the benefits is that it stops them from being crushed. Let me just make sure that is an answer. Um, yeah, to keep it open. So it's like it's a hard material, which means that it doesn't close easily. So it keeps the trachea open, would be enough. Okay, quite a lot of questions today. Um, 7C year 8 from anonymous attendee, but I think I know who that is now, so that's okay. Um, right, this will be the last one I think I'll be able to do. I think I've already done 7C on year 8, which was this one. Um, the If your lungs have a bigger surface area, it means that you can get more oxygen into your blood and release more energy from the process of respiration. That would be that. I should also mention, just before I finish this part of the session, is that I am supposed to send an email around tomorrow, because I've forgotten to do it, but to say that all of you will have a test whenever your lesson is, in the 7 days commencing Tuesday, the 21st of October. So if your lesson is on a Friday, it's the 24th. If your lesson on a Saturday, it's on the 25th. If on a Sunday, it's on the 26th. You get the idea. So anywhere between 21st and 28th, essentially. You will have a test. What's on that test is basically what you've done so far this year, such as cells and atomic structure and periodic table, energy, rearranging equations and maths, and some of what you did on the lungs and stuff last time. I think that's going to be it. So it probably won't have what you didn't do next week. Um, but that is just to let you know that you will get some details about that, along with some notes and things of what we've done so far, which should help you with the test, which we will do. We will do one every 3 months, basically, after this. So another one in January, another one in April, um, another one in July. Right, given that nobody's asking any further questions, I think I will stop there for this section. I will return in 10 minutes for anybody who has questions in the year 10, year 11 booklets, which were the year 10 one at least will be quite similar. I suspect very similar in some cases to what the year 9 did. Yes, it is. And there's a few extra bits at the end of it. So anyway, I think that is all I will do for the time being, and I will be back in 10 minutes. Hello. Can you please do questions 5, 6, 7, 4? You're allowed to look at mine. They're in order. 5, 6, 7. Okay. Let's have a look at them and decide if I want to do them. So it depends. If the answer's in your notes, I will feel less inclined to do it. Um, right. So we will talk about this. Any year 11 stuff, then please tell me. But you guys did hormones and stuff in year 11. So, during gaseous exchange, oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged across the wall of the alveolus. On the diagram, carefully draw two arrows to show the paths taken by oxygen and by carbon dioxide. Label each arrow. So if this is your lungs, your alveoli, then you have breathed in oxygen this way. What happens to the oxygen then is that it diffuses that way. So, for example, I might put oxygen there. And then your blood, what it does at the same time is that it gets rid of um, carbon dioxide. And so carbon dioxide moves the other way. And that would be it. Year 10, 4, and 9. Okay, I'll get to those. Do you mind if I send you a small section to re-explain for you? Yeah, send it and I'll see what I can do. I don't know how you're going to send that exactly, but yeah, you could do it on the WhatsApp if that helps. But I don't know what you mean by re-explain for year 11, but I can do my best with that. Yes. Um, the 10-4 as well. So let me have a look at 4. I mean, I've already sort of explained 4 in the because it came up in the previous booklet that I went through in the last lesson, but I'll just verbally tell you what's going on. Um, Essentially, it's the same as the next question, actually. The question is, what happens in the lungs to change the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide? So the oxygen level that you breathe in is the air that you breathe in has got 20% oxygen, but what you breathe out has got less. So what's happened to it in the meantime? It has moved from the lungs into the blood. That's what's happened, and that's why what comes out is less than what came in. So the oxygen moved from the lungs into the blood. For carbon dioxide, the opposite happens. You breathe in very little, but you breathe out a lot. So how has that happened? It's because during respiration, you produced carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide moved from your blood into your lungs, and then you breathed it out. So that's why you've ended up breathing out way more than what came in. Um, and then compare the percentage of water vapor. Just compare these two numbers, and you just say, well, it's 6 times bigger, the air in the air that's breathed out. So that's dealt with that one. Um, okay, thyroxine. Yeah, so you asked me to explain about thyroxine. Okay, fine. Which is a weird thing, but it's very easy to remember it, so I will deal with that. Okay, so 5, 4 done, 5 done. Oh well, not quite done. The process by which oxygen moves across, you should know, is diffusion. And how does having so many alveoli help gaseous exchange? It means it gives the lungs a large surface area. That's what you want to say, a large surface area for that. Um, Question 6. I mean, I shouldn't need to do part 1, so I'm not going to. Function of the ribs also, I'm not going to answer because you should do that. I'm also not going to answer part B. Um, and this one, which we will do next time we do biology a bit more, but the blood vessel, which is like a pipe that oxygen moves into when it's going into the blood, is called the capillaries. So that one is. Um, let's keep an eye on these. Question 10I that has been asked, is that from this booklet? I just want to make sure that it's from this one you're asking me. And same again, question 8-2, is that from this booklet? Just make sure you say if it's the year 10 one or the year 11 one. What else have we got? 5, 6, 7, 4. Right, so that'll be the last one now, right at the end. Um, okay, I don't know where the 4 is that you mentioned. Question 5, 6, 7, 4. You said they're in order. This doesn't seem to have a 4, so I'll leave that. 9B, have a look. That, yes. So we've got 8 has been asked, and 9 and 10, basically all of it. Okay. Right, question 8. I shouldn't need to do that because you should have part 1 at least. Part 2, name the substance. I mean, I'm surprised you don't have that in your notes. Slightly surprised. because it is the equation for respiration. And if that isn't in your notes, then I'll be highly, highly surprised. So I want to get you to refer back to your notes for question 8, part 2. Um, question 9, and then question 10. 9B. Oh yeah, this is quite a hard question. But basically, when blood is flowing through your blood vessels and you need more of it to flow through, like when you're exercising, then the arteries can widen. That's enough for that answer. They widen. That'll be that. Um, which specific questions would you like help with from the Animal Hormones Year 11 booklet? I am not going to go through the whole booklet without specific requests of questions. Um, all right, and I think that's it, right? Is that it for those ones? 9C, this one, right. Explain how an increase in heart rate helps you during exercise. So again, this should be, you should get to the point where this becomes a very easy question to answer, because what does increasing your heart rate do? It from the year 11 booklet. Yeah, sorry, I need to do that. Increase in heart rate do it results in more blood flowing. What is the blood carrying? That means more oxygen now is supplied to your muscles. I'm sort of simplifying the answer a bit. What does more oxygen allow your muscles to do? More respiration, because it is one of the things required for respiration. And what does more respiration do? It releases more energy. So you see how you can go through this um, to explain why somebody it helps them during exercise. Okay, so that was that. Sorry, was that going through menstrual cycle again? Yeah, I'll do a little recap of the menstrual cycle in a moment. It is complicated, so it's fine. Right, let me answer the questions from the year 11 booklet that has been asked. 5, 6, 7, and 4. Right, 5. Um, right, this is a graph showing, it's quite complicated, these questions, so don't worry too much. Um, Change the levels of 3 hormones in the menstrual cycle. What does the graph suggest the stimuli might be which cause the egg to be released? Right, where is the egg released? There. Okay, so the egg is released here. What might have caused that to be released? Well, did something get really high at that particular moment? Yes, the level of LH, which happens to be the hormone that stimulates the release of an egg in the menstrual cycle. So that would be the answer, which is the LH, basically the LH getting um, or rising sharply, but also what else rises sharply around the same time? FSH. So both of those two hormones seem to increase at that moment. So FSH and LH rise. That would be that. Um, 10I year 10. Let me just check if I got to that already, just so I can get past that one. Is that this one here? No, sorry, it's not. No, this one. Um, right, this one presumably is what we've been asked. Explain why these alveoli have the internal structure shown in figure 10. So, um, I'm not sure, I'm not going to look at the answer for this, I'm going to deal with it myself. Explain why these alveoli have the internal structure shown in figure 10. So, why do they have all of these like blood vessels going around them? So, you want to explain that having those, it's quite a difficult thing to see actually, but that is what it's asking for. Um, so, you want to say, firstly, lots of alveoli. You see lots of these alveoli. Why are there so many of them? So, many alveoli give it a large surface area. This is just really important stuff to be able to say. Large surface area. And what does the large surface area help to do? Is it maximizes diffusion. That actually would probably be all 3 marks for that. I'm wondering if you could say something else. No, that's it. Stick with that. Okay. Um, according to the mark scheme, if you just say LH for that question, when also whoever's saying question 10 at the end of the booklet, again, just if you just specify which year you're talking about, because it's so this is question 10, isn't it? Yeah, fine, done that. I'm not going to answer that because it's easy. And then, yeah, we'll see about that later. Don't worry about those little ones at the very, very end. Um, 5 part 2, yeah, 10. Let's see what that was. No, not doing that. I'm sorry. Um, there are some questions that you should know the answer to based on your notes. That's all. Right. 5C year 11. I'll continue with the list of year 11 questions. So 5, I'll do all of 5. Right. One type of contraceptive pill keeps the level of progesterone high for most of the cycle. Suggest how this might work. So, again, quite a complicated question, but what progesterone does amongst, well, it got two main functions. It maintains the um, uterus lining for a couple of weeks. That's the first thing. But it also, the complicated thing about the hormones, which I will go over in a moment, is I will explain how they link with each other, because that's the hard thing, is that knowing what effect one hormone has on another. So progesterone, the effect that it has is that it keeps the levels of FSH and LH low. It inhibits them. That's the proper word, which means it slows their release. And why would that be in a contraceptive pill? Because the whole point of a contraceptive pill is to reduce the chances of pregnancy. So if you keep FSH and LH low, which are the hormones that help to mature and release an egg, then you're not going to have any eggs, or they'll stop the eggs from being released, and therefore the chances of pregnancy reduced. So it's important to understand what the hormones do directly, but also what effect they have on other hormones. Um, Question 5. C. Outline two arguments for and against using hormones as contraceptive. Right. First of all, for, so good things about them, is usually that they're very effective. They work. That is usually a simple answer for that one. And another mark, oh, it's hard for this other mark. The other mark is that they're convenient. It is easy to take a pill rather than have some sort of surgery. Do you see what I mean? Like, to stop it. Against using contraceptives, is that there can be some side effects like headaches and nausea. That'd be an argument against it. And you could also mention there's quite a few marks. So there could be some long-term effects of it. You could mention religious beliefs. You can mention moral beliefs, like people are against the idea of having some sort of contraception. So that would be enough according to the mark scheme that I'm looking at. Okay. Um, how will this keep level of progesterone high? Well, because it's the pill that keeps the progesterone level high. That's the point. So you take a pill and it contains this progesterone hormone. So you're increasing the amount of progesterone in your body. And what that does is it keeps the other hormones lower, because that is one of the side effects of progesterone, is it lowers FSH and LH. When I go through the full cycle, hopefully this will make a bit more sense. It is a complicated topic. I just want to make that really clear. And that is all of question 5 completed. Um, 6, 7, and 4. Right. So what's on number 6? Ugh. Right. This is suddenly onto animal hormones out of nowhere. If you're doing combined science, then you won't really need to know much about this, I should point out, but it is in triple. Some students investigated phototropism in plant seedlings. That's seeds, essentially. This is the method used. They measured the lengths of shoots of 20 seedlings, set up 4 groups as follows. The bottom of the shoot covered in foil, tip covered in foil, tip removed, no changes. Right, let me tell you why this is relevant. If that is a plant shoot, which is just a thing that grows, then it's the tip of it is where all of the growth hormones or auxins are located. So that's what this is trying to get you to sort of understand, is that if I do these things, how will that affect the growth of it? Well, firstly, if I remove the tip entirely, it's not going to grow because there's no auxins there. If I cover the tip in aluminium foil, also it probably won't grow because they won't. Or well, they will grow, won't it? But it'll have an effect on it. Um, And if you cover the bottom of the shoot in foil, that shouldn't do anything because not there. Right, then they put them in a box. They use a lamp to shine into the box through a hole in one side. After one day, they remeasured the lengths and make a drawing of the appearance from each group. So there's A, there's B, there's C, and there's D. And the light's coming in from this way. This is at the start of the investigation. Please read the question carefully. Start of the investigation. And I'll come back to anybody who's asked questions about the Year 10 booklet in a second. And then presumably there's a picture of, oh no, there isn't. Which two conditions should the students have kept constant for each group of seedlings? So what you want to do, what you want to keep constant is anything that might affect the growth of it other than the light. For example, the temperature should probably stay the same. The amount of water that you're adding to the soil should be kept the same because what you're investigating, and the investigating should be at the top here, you're investigating phototropism, which is the effect of light on them. You want to make sure there's nothing else that could affect their growth other than the light. So you want to keep things like temperature constant, because if it was warmer, one might grow faster. If there's more water, one might grow faster. You want to keep those things the same. You only want to affect the light reaching it. What is the purpose of the aluminium foil? Well, presumably, out of all of these, the most logical answer has got to be to stop light reaching the shoot, right? It's not going to do anything else other than it's a shiny material. Any light shining on it reflects off it. Physics. So that should be that. And then here are the results. A, B, C, and D. Right, I can't remember what these were now. So that's the aluminium foil on the tip. That's no tip. And that's nothing. Okay, there's no change to that. So what has happened here? So we were shining the light from this direction. And what's happened to these two is that these are bent towards the light, which is what's supposed to happen. Because if we just do a exaggerated version of this, right? If that is the tip and all the growth hormones are here, and I shine a light from this direction, these growth hormones are sensitive to the light, which means that they sort of gather away from the light on this side of it. Because I sort of don't like it. And what that does is it causes this side of the shoot to grow faster than this side of the root, which causes a bend towards the light. Hence, this one has bent towards the light because all the auxins are at the tip there. This one has bent towards the light because all the auxins are at the tip there and they're sensitive to the light. This one, nothing has happened to it because we've cut the tip off, so it's not going to grow at all, right? It's actually not grown at all because there's nothing to make it grow. This one has carried on growing straight upwards because it's not detecting any light. So all the auxin are just where they were. So it just carries on growing upward in a straight line because the light isn't reaching it. So that's that. And then there's some information here about stats. What's going on here? Suggest how the students measured the length of the curved shoots of seedlings A and D at the end of the investigation. How would you measure the length? Would you just pull it straight? Oh, yeah, you could just straighten it. If I want to measure the length of this shoot, the problem is it's bent right now, right? So a ruler can't do it. So you could just straighten it and then use a ruler. Or the answer says you could also use a piece of thread and sort of measure it along it, or just get it along it and then transfer it to a ruler and measure it like that. You could do that. The students concluded that the tip of the shoe is needed for the plant to respond to light. Yes. Give evidence for this conclusion from figure 2. Well, C would be the evidence that we would use initially, where when the tip is removed, C, it didn't respond at all. So it didn't grow at all, which suggests that the tip is needed for the plant to respond to light. And also, B, when we covered the tip, it didn't go in the direction of the light. It just went straight up. Why does C not grow? Because there was no tip. And the tip is where all the growth hormones are, where the things that actually make it grow. And we were told in the question that C, tip removed, and that's where all the growth hormones are. And your other question is, what's the shoot? The shoot is just this, as in it's the plant itself. It's a weird word for it. It's just the beginnings of the plant. Right, that's the green bit that grows. So that is right. Let me. Is that the end of that question? It can't be. Oh, right. E. Okay. A hormone stimulates growth in shoots. Which distribution of the hormone would cause the results seen in shoot D? So shoot D was the one that bent like this. And as I said, what happens here is that when you shine the light, the hormones actually gather away from the light on the far side of the light, and that causes one side to grow faster than the other. And so, in answer to this question, I would have thought that that is the answer because it's the ones where they are furthest away from it. That I'll come back to this now. I'll go back to year 10. 9A. Should I not do that already? Um, describe. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, this is the sort of thing that you just need to practice and look at the answers. Like, how would you answer what this graph is showing you? Describe the changes in heart rate between 0 and 14 minutes. So I would say that the heart rate started at 60 beats per minute, and for the first 2 minutes, it rose um, to just over 100. Then after 2 minutes, it continued to rise, but more slowly, because a straight line suggests a faster rise than this slightly bent line, so it slowed down. Then I would say that after 5 minutes, when we finished exercising, it then fell to um, 70 odd, whatever that is. And then it continued to fall, but more slowly. And then at 11 minutes, it then stayed constant after 11 minutes. You're just saying what you see, which is not the easiest thing to do, but that's what you have to try and do. Um, question 10. Um, which is the last question, right? This one here. Right, so I've already done the first part of question 10 to explain that why these alveoli have the internal structure shown in figure 10. It's a bit of a weirdly worded question. Essentially, it's why are there so many of them? So you want to explain that there's many of them, which gives them a large surface area, which maximizes diffusion. So it means that we get more diffusion happening at once when you have a large surface area is just literally the distance around the outside. By having so many of them, we have a bigger distance around the outside, and that gives you a larger surface area, and that speeds up diffusion. Um, question 10, I, the surface area. I think that is what I'm doing, isn't it? But tell me if that's not the right one. Um, that we should know. This question 10, right. Okay. The last one. Okay, let's talk about this. This is going to be quite tricky. Some students investigate the effect of surface area to volume ratio on the rate of diffusion in animal cells. Right, we already know if something has a high surface area to volume ratio, a high surface area, then it's going to speed up diffusion. They use hydrochloric acid in gelatin cubes that have been stained blue using a pH indicator solution. The indicator will turn red in acidic conditions. They put different sized cubes into 3 different test tubes of hydrochloric acid and time how long it takes for the cubes to completely change to red. Okay. 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 Um, Good question. Right, I'll tell you how you do this. It's a weird maths question, this. Let me just explain why this is what it is first. If I've got a cube and it's 6 millimeters by 6 millimeters by 6 millimeters, okay? And I said to you, what is the surface area of this cube? Then that means work out the area of one face. 6 times 6 is 36. And then there's 6 faces as well, right? So the surface area is 36 times 6, which I think is 216. So that's the surface area. If I now said to you what is the volume of this shape, you would do 6 times 6 times 6, which is also 216. That is why this says 1 to 1, because the surface area and the volume are exactly the same when the cube is 6 millimeters long. Now what we need to do is do what it is when it's 2. So if it's 2 by 2 by 2, well, firstly, the volume is 8, because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. What's the surface area? Well, one of these faces is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And there's 6 faces altogether. So the surface area would be 24. And what is 24 to 8 as a ratio? If you divide them both by 8, it would be 3 to 1. I think that's the answer for that one. Quite more maths than anything else. What conclusion we made about the effect of surface area on the rate of diffusion? Right, well, look, when the surface area is to volume ratio is bigger, so 3 to 1 is bigger than 1 to 1, then how long did it take more time or less time? It was much quicker, wasn't it? So you want to say the conclusion is that the bigger the surface area to volume ratio, the faster the rate of diffusion because the time it took to change color was lower. Um, And then emphysema causes some of the walls of alveoli in the lungs to break down. This produces a smaller number of larger air sacs. Use the results to explain the effect of emphysema on oxygen diffusing into the blood. So emphysema, basically what it does is if you get a smaller number of alveoli, it literally kills some of your alveoli. Um, and that means that it results in a lower surface area or a smaller surface area of alveoli. And what do we just learn a smaller surface area does? It results in slower diffusion of oxygen into the blood. So that's why if you get emphysema, which can come from smoking, for example, then you get less oxygen going into your blood with every breath, which means that you're going to run out of oxygen quicker. You're not going to be able to exercise as much. You'll have less energy and so on and so on. Which hopefully answers those questions. And I think that hopefully covers everybody in year 10. Right. Then what I will do is continue with what were these questions here? 5, 6, 7, 4. 7. Right. This actually goes back to what you guys should have done the last time you did. Right. Hang on. Question 4 in year 10. I think I've done that. This one. Yeah, I've already explained this a couple of times. So if you want to go back and watch the video, then you will be able to. So this effectively was actually covered in because homeostasis is a big topic. Last time we did biology at the beginning of, no, we did it at the end of last year actually. So you might not everybody will have done it, but the end of last year, which is we did a topic called the nervous system, where you should have talked about reflexes. And obviously at this stage, for those of you in year 11, you should now get to a point where you are remembering a lot of these things. But what you want to say for a reflex action is that it is a fast automatic response. A reflex is something you don't think about. It just happens quickly and automatically. Like if someone throws a ball at your head, you would instinctively move your head out of the way or try to. That would be an example of a reflex. It is fast, it's automatic, it bypasses the brain. It does not do anything else. And a woman's hand accidentally touches a hot object. The woman moves her hand away rapidly. Describe how the woman's nervous system coordinates the reflex action. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify the answer about the key words that you want to say. So you want to mention receptors. A receptor is like a sensor that you have in your skin, which detects pain or temperature or anything like that. So it will detect that if you touch something hot, then it detects that you have touched something very hot. What it does is it sends electrical impulses to your through your sensory neuron. So sensory neuron is a nerve that carries information from your receptors towards your central nervous system. Because this is going to be a reflex, what then happens is that the impulse travels down a relay neuron and then down a motor neuron. You really need to make sure you know these nerve cells. Sensory neuron, then relay in the middle, then a motor neuron, which then sends an impulse to an effector. An effector is a muscle or a gland that would move your hand away from it. So these words are really, really important. So this is a muscle that pulls your hand away from the hot object. But these kind of words are very, very important to explain when you're answering this question. So you want to mention the receptors detecting that change in temperature. You want to mention electrical impulses passing from the sensory neuron to the relay neuron to the motor neuron. You can also mention something about a synapse. A synapse is the gap between these neurons. It travels across the synapse. Quite a lot of things you can say for a 6 mark. Is this 6 mark? And that ultimately results in your hand pulling away from the hot object. This everything I do automatically is being recorded and ends up on our YouTube page a little bit after the session, automatically. You have to just find it. A link to it is sent in the email that you receive every week about this meeting. It's in there, so you can go and find it on there. All of the ones that I've done but in the past are all on there. All of the English lessons that Mr. Clark does are all on there. You can go back and watch them. So yeah, that's that. Right. The endocrine system, which is the system of hormones, just so you know, the hormone, the insulin or the FSH, LH, all these things. Give three ways coordination by the endocrine system is different from coordination by the nervous system, right? The nervous system does things much faster, basically, right? There's a few key points here. So first of all, the endocrine system is slower than the nervous system. You releasing insulin into your blood has a slower reaction than a nerve. A nerve happens really fast, a nerve signal. It also is the endocrine system has a longer lasting effect. When insulin is released into your body, for example, it keeps your blood glucose down for a long time. It lasts for several hours. Whereas the nervous system, like the one I just did, where you pull your hand away from a hot object, that's just like for a couple of seconds, right? That's done. It's finished. Whereas the hormonal system lasts for several hours. And then the other thing is that hormones travel in your blood. Whereas the nerves are sent by electrical impulses. So it's a slight difference in terms of the way the message is carried around your body. It is a common question. It's about the difference between nerves and hormones. Let me see if anybody's been asked anything. Question 5, part 2, the mean question on the year 10 booklet. Let me have a quick look at that. I think I may have done it. Oh, that one. No, I didn't. Sorry. Um, Sometimes, like I'll just tell you how I would do this without even reading the question. Sometimes with these calculation questions, you can look at one of these rows, figure out how you got to this number. So, for example, I know that if I multiply these two numbers together, what do you get? 5 times 0.8 is 4, which means that without even really fully understanding the question or reading the question, I know that to get to this missing number, you times those two together. That should be it. Um, Can you say the hormones are more accurate than the nerves as they target a specific region? Well, more accurate, no. I mean, the more accurate, that word isn't correct. But if you said, for example, that nerves target a specific region, whereas hormones act in a more general way, that would be fine. So hormones act more generally around in a general area in your body. Nerves are very specific, like when I pull my hand away, it's a very specific thing. But the word accurate I wouldn't use because that's yeah. 4 part 2 from the back of the book. Wait, let me just see what else this person wanted. Um, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I've done that. So just 4, yeah. That one. Wow. Okay, that's long. All right, I'm just focusing on the hormones part of this now. So if you are in year 10, you can stick around if you like. But which endocrine gland secretes adrenaline is the adrenal gland. That's first, easy enough, hopefully. Um, right, then. Explain the effect of adrenaline on liver cells during the exercise. During exercise, this is probably stuff that you might not need to know. It's just we put in a few questions from a few different places. I'll explain it, but just to tell you. So, first of all, adrenaline, what it does is sort of acts a little bit like insulin does um, in relation to the liver cells. It kind of is. This question probably is better off if I said the effect of insulin, because all that adrenaline does is it speeds up what everything's happening in your body. And so, what I would say is that it causes, and again, I don't think you really need to know this. This is where some of the different, some of these questions are on different exam boards. So, in the AQA thing, it isn't really needed, but it's sort of thrown into a different exam board. But I'll just tell you anyway. So, it causes the liver cells to convert glycogen into glucose. It's actually pretty much, and in AQA you learn this about a hormone called glucagon. which causes the liver to convert glycogen into glucose. And what adrenaline does, it speeds up that process so that we can then use that glucose to um, get more energy quickly. That's what adrenaline is doing. It is speeding up the delivery of glucose and oxygen to all of your muscle cells, but it's doing it partly like this by causing the liver to get more glucose out quickly. And then that increases the amount of glucose in the blood, obviously. And that results in more energy and so on. That's what adrenaline does. Hormones only affect organs that it like works on. It won't affect other organs. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you have specific hormones for specific organs. Like insulin generally only affects the liver cells and your muscle cells. So yes, these hormones are generally more um, are are target specific cells. The definition of a hormone is that it is a chemical messenger that activates target cells. So it has certain cells that it specifically works on. Um, for question 9b, could we say that blood flow is increased? Yes, yes. Blood flow is increased. Blood flow is increased. That means more oxygen around your body, more oxygen, more respiration, more energy is released, and that's how it affects the athlete. This idea, and this applies to everybody, especially if you're in year 11, but the year 10 ones, but this idea of understanding that in some situations we get more respiration, in some we get less. And applying that to a question is really important. So, for example, you could be asked, why does increasing the heart rate result in someone exercising better? Well, because more blood is traveling around the body, more oxygen is being delivered to your cells, more oxygen means more respiration means more energy. I could twist that same question around and say, why does smoking cause you to have difficulty in exercising? Well, that's because if you smoke, you damage your lungs. That means less oxygen gets into your blood, less oxygen travels around your body to your cells. Less oxygen means less respiration. Less respiration means less energy released. So having this understanding of oxygen, respiration, energy, and applying it to the situation, whether it's, smoking or training for a marathon, right? It really is important to understand that these all things link together quite a lot. Um, right, is that all? I don't know. Okay, there's more here. Ugh. The table shows the effectiveness of some different forms of contraception. Okay. So it tells you the percentage pregnancies per year if you use these forms of contraception. So we've got less than 1% for injection, patch, pill, diaphragm, condom, sterilization, right? Suggest explanations for the differences in the effectiveness of the method of contraception. Explain why the pill is a popular method. Explanations for the differences in effectiveness. Okay, how would we do this? Right. Um, I don't know where you start. I think there's so many things to talk about. Right. Again, some of this stuff is again, all these questions at the end, remember, is that they often translate into a few different topics from different examples. You don't have to worry about too much, but just depend on which one you're doing. Right, this one is less than 1%. So I might say, for example, that male sterilization basically prevents the release of sperm, which means that there is no chance of fertilization happening, which kind of explains why there's less than 1% pregnancies per year. These kind of hormonal methods, all of them pretty much, whether it's an injection or a patch or a pill, especially the pill, if you think about it, it prevents ovulation or prevents eggs from maturing and being released. And if eggs aren't matured and released, again, fertilization can't happen, which basically explains why there is such a low percentage um, there. Now, these methods are barrier methods, right? So there's a barrier between the sperm and the egg, and therefore they don't necessarily always work because if there's a tear, for example, then you, the sperm may get through or may reach the egg and fertilization could happen. And so that's why those are slightly higher than the others. And they are, so therefore, these hormonal methods are generally more reliable than non-hormonal method. These barrier sort of methods, they're called barriers. So you can prevent pregnancy in a couple of different ways. You can have a barrier in the way, or you can just prevent the sperm or the egg from ever being released, and that's what the male sterilization does, and that's what the pill essentially does. Um, and so going into some of that, and then in terms of the last part of this, so just going into some details about the differences. Why is there a difference in the effectiveness? Because barrier methods are slightly less reliable. They are more likely to, have a mistake in them, whereas the hormonal methods are more permanent and they prevent sperm or egg being released. That's the first thing. And then why the pill is a popular method, because it's just convenient, right? It is a generally much easier to use than injections or patches. That injections and patches are more invasive. They're a bit more going to do that. A patch is essentially like an injection. Um, Essentially, that's what it is. It's something you stick on, and it tries to put some hormones into your body via it's just like an injection, but without the sharp bit, really. Um, which is again, people don't like that compared to taking a pill. Because taking a pill just feels like it's done rather than something stuck on your skin or affecting your skin. So they're a bit more convenient. A diaphragm is similar to a condom in the sense that it's a barrier method that prevents the sperm from getting to the egg. Essentially, that's what a diaphragm is. And so again, those sort of methods, these sort of barrier methods, are less reliable when it comes to preventing pregnancies, whereas the other ones are better, essentially. So that few of those points should be enough so you have a general understanding of what went on there. Right. What I'm going to do for the last part of this is, and also, by the way, for everybody here, I still need to do this next week. I need to just make sure that everybody here, especially the year 11s, have access to these other videos that I have made in the past, which I don't think everybody does yet, just for various reasons, because I haven't sorted it out. But I am just going to talk about a little bit the menstrual cycle specifically, and the bits that I think you should try to know. That's what I want to just focus on for the last part of this. That's not what I wanted. But no, I don't need it. Just do it myself. Don't need any notes. Right. In the menstrual cycle, there are four hormones to try and remember. The way I would remember them is in this particular order, okay? Which is F, O, L, P. Technically, there is no order because by definition, a cycle, there's no order in a cycle, right? It kind of keeps going around. But if you remember it like this, I think it's better as an overall understanding of the menstrual cycle. So the hormones are FSH, estrogen, LH, and progesterone. Okay, to start with, and especially if you're doing foundation level, all you need to know is directly what these hormones are responsible for. FSH is responsible for the maturing of an egg. Okay, so it kind of grows the egg in the ovaries and gets it ready for to be released. Estrogen is the hormone that causes the uterus lining to grow. The growth of the uterus lining is where the egg will go once it is released from the ovary. So the ovaries are where it's kind of growing, and then it will be released and it will go into the uterus lining where it will sit and wait to see if it is fertilized. If it's not fertilized, then the cycle sort of restarts. Okay. But that's the first thing to know. LH, once the egg is matured in the ovaries, right? So imagine these are the ovaries. I don't know how to draw these things. Ovaries, right? And let's say this is the uterus lining. Here's the egg. Once it's ready over here, what LH does is it causes the egg to be released from the ovaries. Okay, so that egg then goes and sits in the uterus lining now. Somebody said something. Yeah, I'll get to those graph questions. They're really easy. I promise you, those graph questions are the easiest things in the world. I'll tell you them in a second. It's just the line is just above the previous one. Um, can you explain the photo I sent? Oh, that. Yeah, thyroxine. I'll try and get that if I get a chance. Um, there's not really much to say about that diagram, but I will just tell you, there's not much to understand about thyroxine. But let me just get through this. LH releases the egg, and progesterone, what that does is it maintains the uterus lining. Well, that means it keeps this maintained while the egg is there for a couple of weeks to see if it's fertilized. Okay. Right. Let me just tell you a little bit more then. So that's the first absolutely fundamental basics of this that you should know. What each hormone does. That's it, right? But then there's more because there's an interaction of these hormones, which means that one has a knock-on effect on another hormone. So it's a bit like a domino situation, like one sort of hits the other and causes the others to start doing something. So what FSH does, apart from maturing the egg, is it stimulates means increases the amount of estrogen. So that's why it's good to remember it in this order, because then you go, well, what does FSH do? It stimulates the release of the next hormone down, estrogen. So the amount of FSH being high causes the amount of estrogen to get higher. Okay, which now is good because we want to grow the uterus lining while the egg is maturing. Right, what does estrogen do? Apart from grow the uterus lining, it stimulates the next hormone down, LH. So it causes the amount of LH to increase, which is what we want, because the next stage of this will be the egg being released. But it also does one other thing. It slows the previous hormone. Because once the FSH has done its job, which is that the egg is mature or grown or ready, whatever you want to call it, we don't want any more, because otherwise you could end up with more than one egg. You kind of want to stop there, right? We've got the egg, stop. So we don't need any more of this. So estrogen does two things. It causes the next hormone to be released, but also slows down the previous hormone, so we don't need any more of that anymore. Right, then LH releases the egg, and the egg has been released now, and it's in the ovaries, at which point progesterone, the last hormone, maintains the uterus lining for about 14 days. And it also, because we don't need any LH anymore, and we don't need any FSH anymore. These two hormones were involved in the release and the maturing of the egg, and this kind of blocks them for a couple of weeks so that there's no more eggs. We've just got the one egg. Um, and then, if after 14 days the egg isn't fertilized, then the level of progesterone falls, the uterus lining breaks down, and the amount of FSH now goes back up, and the whole cycle starts again. That is why it's called a menstrual cycle. It takes a bit of time to get to grips with all of that. Okay, right. Let me just explain the two more things, which are questions that were sent to me. One, I'll stick to the biology first, because it is biology. Right. Right. I'm taking the exact picture that has been sent to me, even though I could use my notes. Right. This hormone, thyroxine, is there's not a lot to know about it. It's just be aware. Firstly, it regulates something called the metabolic rate. The metabolic rate is the speed at which all the chemical reactions happen in your body. Now, the reason this is slightly confusing to understand is that there is a hormone called thyroxine. Okay. But, and this doesn't make any sense, so don't try and make too much sense of it. The amount of thyroxine in your body is controlled by a different hormone called TSH. Okay. So if, for example, there was not enough thyroxine in your body and you needed more of it, then this hormone increases. And what that hormone does is it causes this to increase. Do you see what I mean? That's why it doesn't make any sense, because why can't we just directly increase this hormone? We just don't. Okay. So the TSH is the hormone that brings the amount of thyroxine up. So if we need more thyroxine, we have to get more of this first, and that triggers more of this to come out. If we had too much thyroxine in our body and we wanted to lower it, what we have to do is lower this first, which then lowers this. It doesn't make much sense, but that is what it is. Okay. So as you can see here, when thyroxine is too low, there's a mistake here in these notes. Yeah, well, there's only you had to fill in completely. So let's do this one. When thyroxine is too high, THH levels decrease. Yeah, that's right. So we need to bring it down. So we bring it down via this hormone. Bring that down first, and that then brings the thyroxine down. If the thyroxine is too low and we want it to go up, then we secrete, yeah, more TSH. You should say more TSH there. More of that to bring the thyroxine up. So just to be clear, If you increase this thyroxine stimulating hormone, you get more thyroxine. If you decrease the amount of thyroxine stimulating hormone, you get less thyroxine. And that's kind of it. There's not much more to say, I promise you, about this. I wouldn't go too deep into understanding it more than that. Less thyroxine secretion means we release less of it. It comes from a gland, and now less of it is coming out. That's it. That's what less thyroxine secretion means. Yeah, you bring it down. I'll talk you through it. Right, let me answer the last couple of things that I was asked, which are nothing to do with this. So it was a question that looks like this. Okay, before I fully answer this last bit that someone has asked me, I'm just going to mention something about gases in general. If this is a gas, these are all the particles in a gas, okay? And at the moment, they take up this much space. That's called the volume of the gas. It's how much space it takes up, okay? If I make this gas hotter, that's heat. What happens? What do these particles start to do more? They move more, don't they? And so they kind of spread out a bit more because they're moving further and faster, right? What's happened to the volume of the gas? It's got bigger. So you increasing the temperature of a gas increases its volume because it takes up more space, okay? And therefore, figure one is showing a graph showing how the volume changes with pressure for a gas at a constant temperature. Sketch the graph for the same gas at a higher temperature. So the best way I would explain this is to go, okay, at the moment, at whatever temperature this is the volume of the gas. Now, if it's hotter, surely we're going to get slightly more. And so I believe that the new graph will just be higher than the previous graph. What was that? Okay. And I pretty much answered the next question as well, I think. Sketch the graph of pressure against 1 over V, where V is the volume of gas. Yeah, and that's just the same question again, but you just draw two of the lines. So then your next question that you asked, sketch the graph of pressure against volume. It would essentially be the same thing, I think, except one would just be higher up than the other. Although would it just be the other way around? Um, Yeah, I think that just the last question that you asked, I might be wrong on this one, but you've said sketch the graph of pressure against 1 over V. So if this was 1 over V, not V, then it would just mean that all of these values would be, so if that's like a really big number, it would be a very small number. And if that was a really small number, it would be a really big number. And so I think it would just be, oh, which way around will it be? Sort of like that. And then at a higher temperature, it would just be like further out again. So when it says add a second graph labeled Y, showing the same graph at a higher temperature, it would be like that. Only because there's a 1 over V thing, just swaps it over. But it would still be further out at a higher temperature, which I think is the main question that you're asking, which is if the temperature is higher, you just get a bigger volume. So you have to just increase the graph in that direction more. Well, what do you mean you don't understand the higher temp thing? Like, because if it's hotter, what do particles do more? They spread out more, don't they? And so if they spread out more, they take up more space. So that's why I started with this explanation, just to go, okay, well, if I've got a gas and it just takes up this much space at the moment, if you make it hotter, then these particles now spread out more because they're hotter, because they can take up more space. And that increases the volume. So that's really it. There's no more than that. The hotter a gas, the bigger its volume. In other words, it takes up more space because all the particles spread out more. And that's all this is testing you, whether you understand that if you increase the temperature, you get a bigger volume. So that's why that graph goes out further, because at the same, we're going to get more volume, essentially. It's going to go higher up. So at the same values, it's just going to be a bigger volume. So that's all that is. Um, yeah, because the pressure does increase as well, though, because the pressure's gone up as well at the same point. Both of them have gone outwards. So your pressure's higher, your volume's higher. Um, and so that's why the graph has gone outwards, because both of them are basically higher. Um, so the pressure and the volume are slightly higher out, aren't they? You see what I mean? Like the graph's gone outwards. So both of them effectively um, increased. So yes, the pressure would increase as well, as they would collide. You're correct, because they would collide with the surface of the container more. But there is an equation, and this is what's kind of this is testing you on. There's an equation in your formula sheet, which I'll talk about when we do some physics, but it is something about pressure times volume is constant. So it means whatever number this is, it is the same for that. So it's always this kind of shape. As one goes up, the other goes down. But overall, at a higher temperature, everything is just bigger slightly. Um, that's all it is. So the simple answer, simple understanding for your point is if you increase the temperature, the volume of a gas increases. It takes up more space, quite literally. Right. Hopefully that is enough for today. Next week, you will be doing, if you're in year 10, some stuff about bonding, ionic and covalent. And if you're in year 11, you'll do one of my favorite topics, which is electrolysis, which is, yeah, that's what we're doing. Very exciting. Um, and that's it. Any other questions? Feel free to message us. Otherwise, I will see you next time.